but it is underreported how often Americans use firearms for self-defense every single year, and that ought to be part of the debate. But beyond that, the reason for the Second Amendment is to prevent tyranny against government. So even if everything I said was not true, the reason we have government is to make sure we don't have a Stalin, we don't have a Mao, we don't have a Hitler. And don't tell me it can't happen in America, because Jews would have told you before the rise of Hitler that we are thoroughly integrated into Germany. Germany had more PhDs per capita than any country on the face of the earth. Very well-educated people, very sophisticated people. Jews fought and died in World War I on behalf of Germany. They were part of the boards of major corporations. They played in the symphony. And then along came a tyrant. The next thing you knew, he was passing laws to restrict their firearm ownership, and we had the Holocaust. So it can happen in a sophisticated country. I hope it won't. I trust it won't. I doubt it. But that's why we have the Second Amendment.
Okay, so let's dovetail that to what you have going on in Burns, Oregon. We went out there to the Bundy Ranch outside of Las Vegas. What was that, about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago at this point? What was that, April? I'm trying to remember. It's been a minute. But we went out there because a lot like Ferguson, a lot like Baltimore, a lot like Bundy Ranch, these are the potential powder kegs that are holding on to that Crispus Attucks moment, that first fallen person that lights the powder keg that sets off a revolution. There are people in Occupy movements. There are people quietly waiting in the Tea Party. There are people in Black Lives Matter. There are people in the militia movements. There are a lot of people that are just saying, hey, I'm not going to lunge, but you better be real careful how close you get to me. And I think there are these moments now that are popping up, and we're kind of in the middle of another one, and we don't want to see another Ruby Ridge. We don't want to see another Waco, and that was part of the reason why I went out there to cover it. Stupidly, maybe, as they're pointing out, the snipers are up there in that mountain range, right in that crest, just to the right of and then over in this range, and then here's where they were flying in their helicopters, shooting our cattle and laughing, killing all of the cattle, and that's where the bulldozer came in and dug a big hole on BLM land to just bulldoze all of our dead cattle after they sicked the attack dog on this pregnant woman and tased the son. Yeah, this is what your management company of your HOA is doing. This is what the Bureau of Land Management, this is how they're treating their neighbors. And there are disputes, and there are things going on here. There are backstories to it, and I'm not even necessarily supporting any individual or any individual movement. But, when you say it can't happen here, and then you kind of say, well, wait a minute, Germany was a very sophisticated place, and they went for this. There are these moments, and maybe the most recent one was Baltimore, and Ferguson, and then Baltimore, and then, of course, now in Burns, Oregon. I'm not sure how much you've been following this story, but maybe either talk about this situation specifically or the Ruby Ridge, Waco, Ferguson, Baltimore effect when communities are almost ready to go to civil war with each other.
Well, I think that we are at a tipping point. I think we're at a tipping point in part because of the things that Obama has done with his executive orders, his unleashing of EPA, his unleashing of all these agencies on the lives of the American people. And I find it fascinating, Brian, how the Oregon standoff has been covered. I was watching MSNBC, and several of the pundits said if these were Muslims doing this, they'd be talking about terrorism. But all throughout last year, we saw students taking over buildings. In Occidental here in California, students took over an occupied administration building. And as far as the media was concerned, that was a protest. These ranchers took over an unoccupied outpost building, federal building, in the middle of nowhere, and they were calling this terrorism. And so it's just fascinating how these things are being covered. And I'll tell you, Americans are concerned that their Second Amendment rights are being impinged upon, which is why you're finding record numbers of people applying for background checks to get firearms. It's not just the fear of what happened in San Bernardino. It's not just the fear of what happened in Paris. That's part of it. But part of it is when these kinds of things happen, generally speaking, Obama comes on television and starts proposing further gun control laws and inspiring state lawmakers to do the same thing. And so there is a tipping point going on here, and it's because of the ever-increasing size, scope, and intrusiveness of the federal government, the use of executive orders to go around Congress and to violate the Constitution. And a lot of people are quite upset about it. I know I am.
And the BLM specifically, you know, you've seen it with the Bundy Ranch. You know how much of the western land is claimed as owned territory by the United States, even though there's a lot of people saying you have zero authority. In fact, it's explicitly written that you don't own any property or lands. And not only are you claiming this and taking it away from the people, we the residents of these cities and states, municipalities, towns, villages, whatever, you're actually bullying us around. That was one of the biggest things the Bundys were saying was that you've run out. How many other cattlemen, how many other ranching families? You know, I don't know the number off the top of my head, whether it was 100 or 1,000, but this has been happening for a very long time. You add restrictions, you remove water flow so they don't get the river that they used to anymore. Now you can't drill a well on your prop, and they just like dying by 1,000 pinpricks. You know, eventually you're going to bleed out. Maybe not on the first 500, but we'll get you on 7,000. We're going to make sure we get you on that. And that's really a concern about, it's really a microcosm, the Bureau of Land Management and their neighbors, kind of like the federal government with our entire country. Would you agree with that?
I think you're right. I do agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And it's, again, the unleashing of the EPA. The federal government is by far the largest landowner in our nation. And there's no reason for the federal government to be owning all this stuff anyway. It should be sold off to individuals. Individuals will keep it environmentally sound far better and more efficiently and at less cost than can the federal government.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a song, Snoop Dogg. I'm trying to think back. I think it was on the Doggy Style album. It was...
not on my iPod.
Yeah, this is where I normally, but he says people getting their shanks just in case the war pops off. At night you can hear toothbrushes scraping on the floor. People getting their shanks just in case the war pops off. And I think that's what you're seeing with the militia groups. You're seeing with the new Black Panthers. You're seeing with Black Lives Matter. You're seeing with the Tea Party. You're seeing with some of these groups are just saying, hey, wait a minute. We are really close to a legitimate battle here. This is you guys are ruining lives, and you're throwing people in cages if they don't agree with you. That's the ultimate anti-libertarian policy, is the use of force. And if these people in government work for us, and we're saying that we're not going to tolerate this, didn't we have a phrase in our founding documents about casting off a government when it no longer represents us? Not to say you went to a law school and you can cite exactly what I'm talking about here, but I feel like we were taught this as a birthright.
Well, that's right. The founding fathers talked about that. That we needed to every now and then. I think one of the founding fathers said, cleanse the government to make sure that we get back to our founding principles. And lest people think that you and I are just whining, the polls show that Americans are dissatisfied. Obama's approval rating is at 45% right now. At this juncture in his second term, Bill Clinton's approval was at 65%. Most Americans feel we're on the wrong track economically. Most Americans feel we're on the wrong track as far as foreign policy is concerned. And this recovery has been the worst recovery on record, certainly the worst recovery since the Great Depression. And in the inner city, poverty is up. Among blacks, home ownership is down. The percentage of equity is down. The so-called gap between the rich and the poor is wider than any time in about 25 years. The labor force participation rate, the percentage of blacks that are working or looking for a job, hasn't been this low in 40 years. He has not delivered to his most loyal constituency, and that's been black voters that voted for him to the tune of 95%. So people are dissatisfied. And getting back to Donald Trump, that's one of the reasons I think he's doing well. People are anxious economically. They're mad about illegal immigration to the degree that the White House has never quite understood. And they know that their pocketbooks have not come back from the 2007-2008 recession, even though Obama acts like he rules the world, and then he picks up the pen and starts taking away people's rights through executive orders. You add it all up, people are quite unhappy.
And the stock market's down, what, 1,000 in the past
well,
week?
400, 300? But it's up substantially from when he came into office. But that's another thing. The stock market is owned disproportionately by the top 1%. So the top 1% has disproportionately benefited from this economic recovery. People in the middle have pretty much treaded water. And black people, as I told you before, have lost ground. And so this has not been a good recovery. Why? Because he did the opposite of what Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan cut taxes dramatically. Obama has raised them. Ronald Reagan tried to slow down the rate of government spending, domestic government spending, and to some degree he was successful. Obama put the gas on. He dropped that $1 trillion so-called stimulus on us, cash for clunkers, cash for caulkers, and, of course, a brand-new entitlement known as Obamacare. And he's unleashed more in regulations than George W. Bush did. And so you add it all together, and all he's done is put weights around the ankles of the American economy, and people feel it. They may not know exactly all the different things I said, but they know that they're working harder and making less money than they did 10 years ago, and they don't like it.
Yeah, it's something that the voters have to take into consideration in 2016 as they cast their ballots, and it's part of the reason, another one of the top 5 reasons why Donald Trump is an appealing candidate. He understands when things are tough, how do you make money? Things are always tough. They're always going to be tough, but how do you make money? How do you get on the right track? Now, all of his ideas might not be in the right place, but they're sure going to be in a lot closer of a place than it would be if a Bernie Sanders or a Hillary Clinton were to take the reins of things. God forbid. Gary Johnson just announced he's running for Libertarian. I don't know if any of these people are going to stand any shot. It's probably... it seems like a pretty sealed deal that this is going to be the Hillary and Trump show. What percentage would you say that that's true at this point?
Well, Hillary, of course, is going to get the nomination. The only thing that to stop her is if she gets indicted for the email scandal, and that's not going to happen. Whether Donald Trump gets the nomination, I think, is a coin toss.
50-50.
I don't really know, but the American people, when you look at, as I said, the polls showing how dissatisfied they were, what is the argument that the Democrats make for why you want to hire us for 4 more years?
I got nothing.
I've watched these last 2 Democratic debates, and that question was not asked. The fundamental question is simple. The American people feel that we are on the wrong track. You 3 candidates still standing, have not offered any major, not even any minor criticism of Obama. You haven't criticized his tax plan. You haven't criticized his spending plan. You haven't criticized his foreign policy. If America feels we're on the wrong track, why the hell should they give you 4 more years? That is the fundamental question to ask, and that's why Donald Trump is doing well. The worst Donald Trump could do is better than what Obama has done. Donald Trump won't give us an Iran deal. He won't drop a new entitlement program like Obamacare on us, and he won't raise taxes on job creators. That alone is enough to get my vote. I don't like what he said about trade. I don't like what he said about the Kelo decision. That's the decision that said you could take private land for private use. Trump said something to the effect of, well, if you do it to create jobs, it's a good thing. No, it's not. And there are a number of other things that he has said that I don't like. But I love what he said about immigration, and I love the idea that we need to stand down ISIS, and we need to be bold about that. And I like the idea that Donald Trump, unlike Mitt Romney, another wealthy guy, is not ashamed of his wealth and is somebody that's encouraging America to, quote, be great again, close quote. That's exactly what I think this slogan means, that we can do better than what we've done right now, and we can.
And thank you for reminding me. I think what we're going to do is, actually right now I just did it. I clicked on it, and I'm going to click to retweet this article. But thank you for reminding me. 15 questions in search of a Democratic debate. I read this a few weeks ago. I totally forgot you even wrote it but before I booked you. But I remember reading this, and I'm just going to bounce through it real fast. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But question 1, you're asking about foreign policy and the country being on the wrong track, according to most Americans surveyed. Another question about Senator Sanders calling for the $15 minimum wage. Secretary Clinton advocating for a debt-free tuition and free universal health coverage. Where they're going to get the money for that. Then you talk about Glass-Steagall, Obamacare glitches. Doesn't that mean it doesn't work? United Healthcare, and you go on and you list some amazing questions. I feel like if that was your audition to become a moderator for the next thing, I think you got the job, kid. I think you got the moxie. I think you got what it takes, see?
Well, just one of them, in the case of the $15 minimum wage, I point out that Joe Biden's economist is a man named Jared Bernstein, a lefty. Even he says a $15 minimum wage is too high, and at that point you begin to lose jobs. So if a left-wing economist who's the economist for the vice president says the $15 minimum wage is too high, why are you right and why is he wrong?
Right. Well, it's an answer that they don't want to give. It's a lot like Hillary not wanting to answer what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. It's something Chris Matthews, God bless him, he is addicted to this question. He is crushing it with this question. He nailed Debbie Wasserman Schultz with it, and now he's got Hillary. Well, I can tell you what I am. What you see, George, is it's incredible. Do you know how that question can even be answered? I think it's brilliant.
It is, and although he's not trying to play gotcha, I'm not quite sure why he's asking the question, because he did not nail Hillary when she evaded it. He did say that you evaded the question, but he didn't press her on it. This is a guy who said when Obama got elected, it's my job to, quote, make sure he succeeds, close quote. And so I'm not impressed with him as a questioner, but the point is that socialism is not a four-letter word among Democrats. A majority of Democrats have a favorable view of socialism. Socialism means government ownership of means of production. So you have the majority of the Democratic Party okay with the idea of government taking over means of production because they so distrust capitalism. That, to me, is scary.
It's insane, and the Bernie bots, you know, they remind me of the Ron Paul people a little bit from 4 years ago. It's so locked in with the tunnel vision that some of the other things that they're not really. I'm trying to see. Yeah, the Bernie Sanders socialists just astonish me because they're right. There is a big problem. There is a systemic problem. Yes, certain areas the system is completely rigged against the little guy. Yes, there's tons of corruption. And it's like, Bernie, you have me on these first 15 things you're saying. They're kind of general, but get into the specifics. All right, now get a load of this. Socialism. And you go, wait a minute. You're advocating the exact opposite solution? Yeah, I really mean it. You know, and I think it's great having Larry David playing him on Saturday Night Live. I think it's a perfect representation.
Enough with your damn emails. You need to do something about the millionaires and billionaires. I've had enough with your damn emails.
That's not bad. That's not bad. We might have to get a card.
I'm here all week.
Yeah, forget about it. I want to hit on these two things and let you get going. Once again, Larry Elder. Follow him on Twitter at Larry Elder. But you were tweeting a few things out here into the Hillary thing and, of course, the North Korea thing. So the Hillary thing is, you know, now Juanita Broaddrick is back in the news, and it's not that you reading your tweet from 2 hours ago. You say one more time at CNN. Nobody's accusing Hillary of sex abuse. Issue is her role in attacking Bill Clinton's accusers, especially Juanita Broaddrick. Talk about that for a second, because if we're going to talk about sexism, Hillary, if we're going to talk about abuse of power and criminal behavior, let's go. Let's get into it. Get into it, Larry.
That's right. Hillary said that when it comes to allegations of sexual abuse, women should be believed. And I have never heard Hillary specifically being asked, Juanita Broaddrick claimed she was raped by your husband, and that 2 weeks after the alleged rape, at a campaign event, you verbally intimidated her. True or false? To my knowledge, Hillary has never been asked that question. Now, Juanita Broaddrick is a woman who went on Dateline NBC, made the allegation I just now made, and then said what I said about Hillary intimidating her. Yet there's a no-fly zone over asking that question about Hillary. Now, with Donald Trump in the race, because Donald Trump was called sexist for a comment that he made when he used the word schlong, which, by the way, was used by an NPR host on radio back in 2011. Nobody said jack.
Didn't he? Wasn't he going for she got shellacked and shallonged came out?
That's all he meant.
Yeah, a potato.
He has a penchant for sexism, and he said, "Okay, it's on now, babe," and start talking about these women that made allegations. Now, here's the issue. The issue is not Bill Clinton's behavior. It's not his behavior. It's not his behavior. It's what she did to malign the accusers. And there's two books, and fortunately for the Clintons, the authors of both these books are dead.
Oh, no, you mean... Hold on, wait a minute. I got to pause there. Larry, I got to pause. You're saying somebody in the connected to the Clintons over the past 30 years is dead?
No,
because there's quite a big list from Vince Foster through about 17 million people. In fact, entire countries were killed connected to the Clinton administration. No, I'm just kidding.
Barbara Olson wrote a book called Hell to Pay, and she unfortunately was killed on 9/11. She's in one of the planes.
Oh.
And she said Hillary Clinton was behind hiring private detectives and lawyers to dig up dirt on Bill Clinton's accusers. It's called the nuts or sluts strategy. Either malign the women as crazy or horny. Similarly, Christopher Hitchens, a lefty who used to write for The Nation, he died of cancer after he wrote a book called No One Left to Lie To. And by the way, the foreword of that book was written by a guy named Douglas Brinkley. Douglas Brinkley, I saw tonight on CNN. He's a left-wing historian who's very well regarded by the left. He wrote a foreword for this book. And in this book, Christopher Hitchens says 3 women have made credible allegations of rape against Bill Clinton, and he said the same thing as did Barbara Olson about Hillary's role in maligning these accusers of Bill Clinton. Now, if you're a woman running for president, and Hillary recently said, one of the reasons you ought to vote for me is because I'm a woman, hear me roar, and you're talking about women's rights, and you purport to be a feminist, yet when women have made allegations against your husband, not only have you not believed them, you hired private detectives and lawyers to go and get them. That's a whole nother Oprah. It's one thing to have a cheating husband. It's one thing to accommodate the cheating husband. It's one thing to look away. It's a whole other thing to sick private detectives on the accusers. And that is what Hillary has been accused of doing, and that's what's relevant in this election, and only that.
Wow. I just read that Joe Biden is losing his mind. He's regretting his decision to not get into this race. You just wonder.
He could have won.
He could have won. And he still, here's the thing.
Elizabeth Warren.
He still could. He still could.
Yeah.
I think Hillary's going to, with Hillary Clinton, it's one thing to say you ignored Ambassador Stevens' multiple requests through cables and emails and carrier pigeon and hieroglyphics begging for additional support. And for some reason, it got lost on your desk all 35 times or however many times he was begging, I need assistance here. There's going to be an attack. This is going to get bad. So let's pretend you're not even setting him up to die to cover up what you're doing, running guns through. Okay, let's just pretend. It's one thing to say Hillary's not good at her job. And what do? Look at Syria, look at Libya, look at Iraq, look at Iran, look at North Korea. Look at what she set up. And say she's really, really bad at her job, or like Donald Trump says, is maybe the worst Secretary of State in United States history. It's another thing to say, no, she deviously plotted this, and the reason she allowed him to get killed, Ambassador Stevens, was because he knew too much, and the movie 13 Hours about Benghazi's coming out with Michael Bay directing. I don't know if you've seen any of the previews for it, but it looks... It got me. I've been covering this story since it came out. I smelled a rat from the minute they tried to blame a YouTube video nobody saw. It's hard to think that Obama and Clinton were just asleep at the switch when this was happening. It sure feels intentional. And now you can establish with these books and with Donald Trump or somebody else hitting back on these things, you're painting the picture of the person that was kicked off of the Nixon investigation for lack of ethics. Did that one turn out to be true as well? The Hillary Clinton thing?
Which thing about
getting kicked off for ethics with the Nixon administration?
I don't know what happened. All I know is that she was on that committee, and at one point she was a Goldwater girl, a Republican, and somehow she did a switch in ideology. But I have no idea about that. But regarding Benghazi, I think it's real simple what happened. What happened is Obama was running for office, and his mantra over and over again was, GM is alive, Osama bin Laden is dead, and Al Qaeda is on the run.
You're right.
And they were high-fiving themselves over joining with the British and the French in bombing Libya and getting rid of Gaddafi. And therefore, Libya now is peaceful, and they love America because of what we've done to get rid of the tyrant. And so they willfully looked the other way when requests were made for defense, and they left Benghazi unprepared because they did not want to mess up Obama's narrative. And they believe that narrative. They have this alternate reality where they see what they believe. And so that's what I think happened regarding Benghazi. And what the movie shows is that apparently had we allowed nearby military personnel to go in there and try and rescue them, maybe something could have been done. And we were told repeatedly that was nothing that could have been done, fog of war, and therefore nearby military personnel could not have been dispatched to help these people. I understand the movie shows heroic contractors who were not obligated to do anything were able to intervene and save lives.
Yeah, a lot of lives were saved that day. We know of the 4 that were killed, but because of the actions that these people took, a lot of people are alive. It was a bloodbath. It may have just been caught asleep at the switch, caught with your pants down. It felt premeditated to me. And there have been so many lies about it from pretty much every angle we've had. I think some of the details might lie somewhere in between those two combinations. But let's do this. For the last question, Larry, we'll let you get going. North Korea, hydrogen bomb. Nope, it was just an earthquake. But, it's another thing that you were talking about. You tweeted, you said the media's in a tizzy over whether North Korea has a hydrogen nuke as opposed to just an atomic one. But they cheered the Iran deal. They cheered the Iran deal. Talk about that.
Well, the very same people that are upset and worried about whether or not North Korea has taken it to another level were doing high fives when Obama essentially has given Iran a pathway to a nuke. Now, if you think that North Korea is a problem, imagine what happens when the Ayatollahs get a nuke. I believe they're going to make Kim Jong-un look like the Chamber of Commerce. And these are the same people who, when Bill Clinton was in office, deluded themselves into thinking that there was some sort of nuclear deal, as you pointed out earlier in our conversation, that would shut down the nuclear program. In fact, it did no such thing. And similarly, we have gone down the same road into believing that the Iranians are somehow not going to develop a nuclear bomb, when in fact we've given them a pathway to do it. They're already cheating, and we took off the table anything having to do with their missile development program. And so, as far as I'm concerned, Obama believes that we in America, because of our imperialism, have made things worse, and he really wants us to interfere less, because if we interfere less, our enemies will respect us, and they will no longer be our enemies. It's naive. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates was asked, why is Obama doing this nuclear deal with Iran? And he said to Bob Schieffer on CBS, he's doing it with the hope that after 10 years of prosperity, Iran will turn away from its terrorism. And he said that hope, in his opinion, is unrealistic. So you have the former Secretary of Defense criticizing the sitting President of the United States as being naive for allowing this pathway to develop a nuclear bomb on the part of Iran. I don't know how much more damning you can get.
Well, it's very similar to his gun restriction philosophy. We posted a video talking about it, and the reaction was just, it'd be comical if it wasn't either a trolled puppet account or someone that believes this, but it's as naive as saying, hey, if we put a few more restrictions on guns, we'll stop violence. No, it's the opposite. You get more guns equal less crime. What is that? John Lott wrote that. I believe it's John Lott wrote that book.
It was John Lott.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to bring him on the show. But yeah, more guns equal less crime. If everybody was armed, you'd have a much more polite society. If you knew that, you would just you wouldn't look at people the wrong way. You wouldn't act out, and it would prevent the bad people from doing more damage than they have been doing. It's just it's a completely naive, upside down Superman Bizarro world kind of thing, where Democrats think making things tougher for the good guys is going to help. Or it's all a scam. I don't know. Well, let me ask you that about liberalism and the Democrats. Final question. Is it a scam, or are they just naive? Because I often ask, is Barack Obama just incompetent, or is he doing all of this intentionally with a greater plan in mind?
Well, Dick Armey, the Republican former House Majority Leader, once said, Republicans believe what they see, Democrats see what they believe. And again, I've mentioned this before, people call Obama arrogant. I think it's beyond that. He lives in what I call an alternative reality. If we just extend with an unfinished list our hand to Iran, Iran will renounce its intentions against us. If we throw the Poles and the Czech Republic under the bus and ignore the nuclear defense deal that George W. Bush negotiated, I can get Russia, who does not like the deal, to lean on Iran, and Iran will then end its nuclear program. If we just pass another gun law, never mind that the gun law admittedly would not have done anything to stop the mass shootings, then maybe in the future it'll stop some other mass shooting. It is the desire to see the world as we wish to see it rather than to see the world as it factually is. I don't know whether you call that a disease, an infirmity, a naivete. No matter what it is, it's not good.
Coming from two Cleveland sports fans.
Absolutely.
It's that thing we're born into.
Tribe.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
Tribe.
Roll Tribe. Yeah, we hired the baseball guy to run the football team now. Go figure, the Moneyball guy. What a world we're living in. Well, Larry, hey, I want to thank you for joining the show today. I'm glad we got to do a full sit-down. I'd like to do some of these a little bit more regularly, every couple months, bring you back and do a segment. But definitely we also want to wish you the best of luck with the upcoming deal with Salem. Should that finalize the way you're hoping it does, all the best wishes from us. Maybe take the last 30 seconds here and tell people once again how they can find you, where they can check out your book, where you can be heard live on air, and we'll go from there.
I'm on air every night from 9 p.m. until 11 p.m. Pacific Time on AM 870 The Answer. You can go online to am870theanswer.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Larry Elder, like me on Facebook. And my last book is Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lies, 8 Hours. You can see that on my blog, elderstatement.com. All 4 of my books are there. You can just click them on to order them if you like. Also, I have a podcast. Go to larryelder.com, and all new subscribers to my podcast will get a signed copy of the aforementioned Dear Father, Dear Son, the 2 Lies, 8 Hours.
Very nice. Definitely check that out. The book sounds fascinating. I think maybe next time we talk, maybe dig in a little deeper on that specifically. But yeah, Larry, thanks again for your time. Keep doing what you're doing. Best luck in the future, and we'll talk again soon. And for everybody out there in the TNAM radio network, I just want to thank you for checking out the show. I want you to go to youtube.com/The New American Media. Subscribe on Twitter. We're at American_media_ and do a Facebook search. The New American Media. I just want to say I appreciate all of you. I love you. We'll talk again soon. Peace.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the NewAmericanMedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed, because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets, come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.